The soft hum of the city outside my apartment barely registered against the pounding of my own heart. Even now, with the door locked and the blinds drawn, I couldn't shake the thrill that ran through me every time I prepared for this private ritual. Most people thought they understood me. My calm demeanor at work, my casual confidence among friends, but they had no idea. None of them could know the truth that I kept buried, hidden beneath layers of normalcy, the part of me that ached to surrender control, to be transformed to become something else entirely. It started innocently enough, almost by accident. I was never one to flaunt my desires, never bold enough to let my fantasies step into the light. Yet, one rainy evening, I found myself rifling through the forgotten corners of Isabella's wardrobe, just curious, just wanting to feel the silky fabric of her stockings against my fingers. The thrill was immediate, electrifying, and frightening all at once. I told myself it was harmless, I could stop any time. But deep down, I knew the truth. I didn't want to stop. I, Daniel, was a man by the world's standards, tall, lean, with sharp features and the kind of quiet presence that drew people in without them realizing it. At work, I was precise and professional, the kind of employee who never stirred controversy. I liked things orderly, predictable. But at home, that was where the real me existed, the me that shivered at the feel of satin against bare skin, the me that longed to be guided, dominated, made over. And it wasn't just about the clothes. It was about losing control, about letting someone else shape me entirely. Isabella was everything I was not. Bold, commanding, impossibly confident. She had a presence that demanded attention, and a sharp intuition that seemed to read my every secret thought. When we first started dating, I thought I could keep my desires hidden, tucked safely behind polite smiles and casual touches. But Isabella, she noticed everything. The way my eyes lingered on her legs, the almost imperceptible tremor in my voice when we talked about style or fashion. And instead of judging me, she intrigued me. She saw the part of me that I didn't fully understand myself, and slowly, ever so subtly, she began to take control. Our apartment reflected her personality more than mine. Minimalist, modern, with every item in its precise place, but also imbued with a certain warmth that made it feel intimate, safe, yet dangerous in the most thrilling way. It was in this space that I found myself experimenting, day after day, in secret. My collection of stockings, delicate dresses, and wigs grew quietly in the back of my closet, hidden behind my regular wardrobe. And every time I dressed, every time I let myself become her doll, I felt a rush of fear and exhilaration that nothing else could match. Tonight, I had promised myself, would be different. Isabella had gone out for dinner with friends. A rare night she wasn't commanding my attention. I had the apartment entirely to myself. Normally, I would hesitate, my mind racing with the what-ifs. What if she came home early? What if someone called? But the thrill was irresistible. I tiptoed into the bedroom, my fingers trembling slightly as I opened the hidden compartment I had built behind the closet doors. There, my secret treasures awaited, a silky black dress, stockings that shimmered under the faint light, and a pair of heels I had carefully polished to a high shine. As I lifted the dress, I felt a familiar mix of anticipation and dread. The fabric was soft, whispering promises against my skin even before I slipped it on. I breathed in slowly, savoring the scent of perfume lingering on the fabric, a trace of Isabella's world, a hint of the control I so desperately craved. There was a part of me that wanted to stay hidden, that feared the exposure of this secret life, but another part, the louder, hungrier part, urged me forward. I began my transformation slowly, deliberately. First, the stockings, sliding them up over my legs, the sensation sending shivers up my spine. Then the dress, clinging to my body in all the right ways, accentuating curves that weren't there an hour ago but somehow felt natural. Finally, the heels, each step a reminder of vulnerability and powerlessness, of surrendering to something greater than myself. The mirror reflected a stranger. Yet a stranger I had always wanted to be. My reflection stared back with wide eyes, flushed cheeks, and lips that had been carefully painted with a soft, daring red. I could barely recognize myself, and yet, I had never felt more alive. Isabella's influence loomed over me even in her absence. Every decision, every movement, felt guided by her unseen hand. The thrill of her control, even when she wasn't present, was intoxicating. I was no longer just Daniel, I was her creation, her doll, perfectly poised in a world where my only role was to obey, to look, to exist as she willed, even in my own secret moments. And yet, the tension lingered. I could hear the faint hum of traffic outside, the possibility of someone knocking, of a message pinging on my phone. Every shadow in the apartment seemed alive, every creak in the floorboards a potential discovery. The risk was part of the allure, the dance of secrecy that made my transformation even more thrilling. As I adjusted my wig and ran my fingers along the soft fabric of the dress, I felt a strange sense of anticipation. Tonight, it wasn't just about pleasure or curiosity. Tonight, I wanted to push the boundaries further, to test the limits of my secret world. What would happen if I embraced the transformation completely, if I allowed myself to be utterly dollified by the control I so craved? My heart pounded in my chest as I took a tentative step toward the living room, the heels clicking softly against the polished floor. Each movement was a study in balance and vulnerability, a rehearsal for a world in which I was not Daniel, but something else entirely. And as I paused before the mirror, studying the reflection that was at once familiar and foreign, I realized that this was only the beginning. Isabella's control wasn't just a fantasy. It was a reality I could taste, feel, and inhabit. And once I stepped further into it, there would be no turning back. The moment the front door clicked shut behind Isabella, a shiver of anticipation ran down my spine. Alone, or at least, seemingly alone, I allowed myself to truly inhale the freedom that came with her absence. Every step I took in my heels felt like a secret heartbeat, a pulse of exhilaration and fear. The apartment, quiet and bathed in soft light, became my stage, my playground, my confessional. I moved to the living room, letting the dress sway slightly with each careful step. The mirror across the room reflected the full picture of my transformation, and I couldn't help but stare. The soft wig framed my face perfectly, curling just so around my cheeks, giving me an appearance that was delicate, feminine, almost ethereal. The stockings hugged my legs, the heels added height and an unnatural grace to my movements, and the dress, oh the dress, clung to my torso in a way that felt daringly intimate. My reflection stared back at me with wide, innocent eyes, a mix of vulnerability and excitement that made my pulse race. Part of me felt ridiculous, a foolish man playing dress-up in the shadows. But another part, a louder, more insistent part, felt alive in a way I had never known. It was intoxicating, this sense of being someone else, of slipping entirely into a persona that was both fragile and powerful at once. The thrill of surrendering to my desires, of being fully dollified, was unlike anything else. I traced my fingers along the fabric, imagining Isabella's approving gaze, imagining her delight at the control she would eventually wield over me. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, a sudden jolt of reality. It was just a notification, probably a harmless message, but it made my heart skip. The risk of discovery was part of the thrill. The idea that someone could walk in at any moment, catching me mid-transformation, sent a delicious shiver down my spine. I couldn't help but laugh softly at myself, a nervous, breathless sound that made me feel both guilty and exhilarated. I decided to push further. Tonight wasn't about just standing in front of the mirror or playing with accessories. Tonight, I wanted to fully embrace my new persona. I dug deeper into my hidden collection, producing a small makeup kit I had been carefully curating. Blush, eyeliner, mascara, and lipstick. Each item a tool of metamorphosis, a key to unlocking a part of me I had kept secret for so long. I began with the blush, carefully dabbing it onto my cheeks. The soft, powdery scent filled the air, mingling with the faint perfume lingering on the dress. As the color deepened on my skin, I felt a strange thrill, a sense of boldness that was almost intoxicating. I moved to my eyes, tracing the eyeliner with careful precision, the liquid tip gliding against my lids with a satisfying smoothness. Each stroke transformed me further, making me less myself and more a vision of something I had always desired to be. Lips came last, painted in a soft, daring red. I pursed them, testing the color, feeling a strange mix of shyness and pride. I had never allowed myself to feel this way, never allowed anyone, not even Isabella, into this level of intimacy. Yet, in the quiet of the apartment, I was free to indulge, to become fully dollified under the imagined control of the woman I loved and feared. My internal conflict surged with every movement. Shame flickered alongside desire, a reminder that this world I inhabited was forbidden. What would people think if they knew? What would Isabella think truly, if she discovered how far I had taken this secret ritual? And yet, these thoughts only added fuel to the fire. Fear and excitement intertwined, each amplifying the other. I was both terrified and exhilarated, aware that the line between pleasure and exposure was razor-thin. I experimented with poses, walking slowly around the apartment, practicing the sway of my hips, the tilt of my head, the delicate placement of my hands. Each motion was a study in femininity, a careful mimicry of grace I had admired from afar for years. The mirror reflected my efforts, and for the first time, I allowed myself a soft smile, a glimpse of pride in the persona I was creating. Then came the heels. I had practiced walking in them before, but tonight I wanted to test my limits. I took a step, then another, the click of the heels on the polished floor echoing in the empty apartment. Balance was key, poise essential. Every misstep reminded me of my vulnerability, of the fragility of this new identity. And yet, each successful step bolstered my confidence, making me feel like a living, breathing doll under the imagined control of Isabella. The suspense of her potential return lingered like a shadow. Every noise, the distant honk of a car, the creak of a floorboard, the soft rustle of curtains, made my heart leap. I imagined her stepping through the door, eyes narrowing, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips as she took in my full transformation. The thought both thrilled and terrified me. Would she scold me? Reward me? Or simply claim me, fully and utterly, as her creation? I decided to test myself further. I retrieved a delicate choker from my collection, fastening it carefully around my neck. The sensation was electrifying, a tangible reminder of submission, of surrender. I caught my reflection once more, noting how the choker emphasized the curve of my neck, the softness of my shoulders. I was becoming something more than Daniel, something molded by desire and the looming presence of Isabella's control. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. I explored the apartment in my transformed state, dancing quietly in the living room, tracing my fingers along furniture, adjusting the wig when it slipped, testing the edges of my new persona. Every detail mattered: the tilt of my head, the subtle arch of my back, the careful placement of my hands. I was practicing, rehearsing, preparing for the inevitable moment when Isabella would assert her influence over me fully. The apartment seemed to shrink around me, heightening every sound, every movement. The thrill of exposure, even in imagined scenarios, was intoxicating. I imagined knocking over a vase by accident, a neighbor peeking in, the urgent need to recover composure. Each imagined mishap sent shivers down my spine, making the experience more real, more dangerous, more thrilling. And then, as if the universe had decided to test me, a sharp knock echoed through the apartment. My heart stopped. The sound was deliberate, precise, almost mocking. I froze, caught mid-step in my heels, a doll in waiting. The knock came again, and I realized with a shock that it wasn't imaginary. Someone was at the door. Panic surged, adrenaline flooding my veins. I glanced at the mirror, at the fragile, perfect reflection of myself, and for the first time felt the weight of consequence. My transformation, my secret world, was on the verge of discovery. My mind raced. Should I hide? Change back? Or confront the unknown intruder while fully dollified, risking exposure for the sake of living the fantasy to its edge? The suspense was unbearable. Every second stretched, every heartbeat loud in my ears. I could hear the faint shuffle of someone outside the door, the soft click of their shoes on the threshold. And yet, a small, reckless part of me thrilled at the idea of being caught, of having my secret laid bare. I inched toward the door, the heels clicking softly against the floor, each step a test of nerve, balance, and courage. The knock came again, more insistent this time, and I realized the world I had constructed in my apartment, the delicate, thrilling, dangerous world of dolls and control, was about to collide with reality. The knock had stopped, replaced by an ominous silence that pressed down on the apartment like a living thing. My chest heaved as I froze mid-step, the heels locking me in place. Every nerve in my body screamed in anticipation and fear. I told myself it was probably a neighbor or a delivery, but my mind spun darker, more thrilling possibilities. What if it was Isabella? What if she had returned early, catching me in this utterly exposed, dollified state? My reflection in the mirror caught my eye, and I barely recognized the figure before me. The wig perfectly framed my face, the makeup flawless, and the dress clinging to curves I had only just discovered on my body. The heels made every movement a delicate act of balance, emphasizing both vulnerability and an unnatural elegance. I was utterly transformed, but the transformation was no longer just physical. It had seeped into my mind, shaping me, making me hyper-aware of every sound, every shadow. A second knock shattered the silence, louder this time. My heart jumped. I couldn't retreat, couldn't hide without risking exposing myself in some humiliating way. The thrill of fear mixed with the intoxicating sense of submission coursed through me. I realized that I wasn't just scared, I was alive, every pulse electric with the tension of potential discovery. I took a tentative step toward the door, the heels clicking softly. My hand hovered over the handle, trembling. The idea of opening it, of confronting whoever was outside while in this dollified state, made my stomach twist in excitement and dread. My mind raced through scenarios. What if Isabella walked in, eyes wide, a smirk on her lips as she saw the full extent of my surrender? What if it was someone else, someone who would mock me or expose me? The door swung open, and a figure filled the frame. It wasn't Isabella. It was Lucas, a colleague from work, holding a package. His eyes widened in shock the moment they met mine. For a split second, time froze. My reflection caught in the hallway mirror behind him, the image of me fully transformed, dollified, standing in heels and silk. My lips parted in a silent gasp, and I felt the first real pang of fear. Was my secret finally exposed? Lucas blinked, then chuckled awkwardly. Hey Daniel. Didn't expect to see you like this. The words were harmless, but the casual tone only heightened my anxiety. Every second felt like an eternity, every shadow and sound amplified. My heart pounded as I realized just how precarious this situation was. I had to think fast. I forced a laugh, stepping back slightly, adjusting the dress. Just trying something new, I said, my voice trembling with the mix of shame and defiance. The words sounded weak even to me, but they bought a fraction of time. Lucas raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued but no malice in his expression. Right, well, package for you. Thought you might want to sign. He trailed off, glancing at the mirror again, his smile faltering slightly. I bit my lip, desperately trying to maintain composure. The adrenaline surged through me, a mix of fear, humiliation, and an odd thrill. I realized in that moment that this wasn't just about being discovered. It was about embracing the exposure, letting myself be seen, and feeling the power of submission under pressure. Lucas stepped forward cautiously, placing the package on the table. You look different. Really different. His tone was a strange blend of curiosity and admiration, which only intensified the humiliation. I nodded, fumbling with the edges of the dress, trying to appear casual while every fiber of my being screamed in embarrassment and exhilaration. Thanks, I murmured, barely above a whisper, my voice trembling. Just experimenting. He chuckled again, a low, nervous sound. Right. Well, don't take this the wrong way, but you pull it off. Honestly. Wow. My stomach flipped at the unexpected compliment, my cheeks burning under the makeup I had so meticulously applied. The thrill of being seen, of being acknowledged in this vulnerable state, was intoxicating. Then came the unexpected twist, the sound of a key turning in the lock. My heart stopped. Isabella. She was home. My pulse raced uncontrollably as I glanced toward the door, my mind scrambling for a plan, for any way to escape exposure or humiliation. But the truth was clear, I had no escape. My heels, my dress, my entire persona, all of it left me exposed, utterly at her mercy. Isabella stepped into the apartment, her gaze immediately locking on me. A slow, knowing smile curved her lips. Well, what do we have here? Her voice was calm, commanding, dripping with amusement and authority. Lucas froze, caught between curiosity and confusion, but my attention was entirely on her. Every nerve in my body responded to her presence, every instinct telling me that I was about to be utterly controlled. Daniel, she continued, stepping closer, her eyes scanning every detail of my transformation. I see you've been playing while I was gone. Her tone was teasing, but beneath it was a sharp edge that made my pulse spike. I felt exposed, vulnerable, yet somehow exhilarated. Her approval or disapproval was a drug, each syllable heightening the tension coursing through me. I swallowed, my voice barely audible. I didn't mean. I was just. The words faltered, useless against the weight of her gaze. She circled me slowly, inspecting every detail, her eyes lingering on the stockings, the dress, the choker. Each movement sent shivers down my spine, a mixture of fear, arousal, and awe. Lucas shifted awkwardly, clearly unsure whether to intervene or retreat. Isabella ignored him entirely, her focus locked on me. "You've done well," she said finally, her voice softening slightly, almost imperceptibly. "But you know the rules, don't you?" I nodded, heart racing. I knew what was coming, what she would demand, how she would assert control, and how utterly powerless I would be. The thrill of anticipation was nearly unbearable. She reached out, adjusting the wig slightly, her fingers brushing against my skin. The simple contact sent a jolt through me, amplifying the humiliation and desire in equal measure. "From now on," she whispered, leaning close so only I could hear, "you'll learn what it truly means to be mine. Fully, completely. Dollified, as you've always wanted." Her words were both promise and command, and I shivered in response, utterly captivated by the sensation of being under her control. The package Lucas had brought went unnoticed as he quietly excused himself, leaving the room and the apartment entirely in Isabella's hands. She guided me toward the living room sofa, every step calculated, deliberate, emphasizing my vulnerability and her dominance. I felt every inch of my dollified self exposed, every heartbeat amplified in the charged silence between us. She leaned back slightly, watching me with a critical, almost clinical gaze. "You like this, don't you?" she asked softly, almost a whisper. My lips parted, and I could barely form the words, the admission spilling out unbidden. "Yes. I love it." A smile curved her lips, slow and satisfied. "Good. Because this is just the beginning. There's so much more you need to learn. About control, about submission, about being completely mine." Her hand rested lightly on my shoulder, a gentle yet undeniable assertion of dominance. I shivered again, aware that my secret desires had not just been exposed, they had been claimed, formalized, and intensified under her careful, intoxicating control. The climax of my transformation wasn't just physical, it was emotional, psychological, and absolute. I was no longer simply Daniel in a dress, I was Isabella's creation, her doll, caught between fear, humiliation, and the intoxicating thrill of complete surrender. And as she guided me further into the sofa, adjusting my posture, my wig, my dress, I realized that nothing would ever be the same. I had crossed a threshold, one from which there was no return, and the exhilaration was unbearable. The apartment felt different now, smaller, heavier, as if the walls themselves were leaning in to watch. Isabella didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her calm was far more terrifying than anger ever could be. I stood there in front of her, heels planted awkwardly on the floor, shoulders tight, hands folded the way she had taught me to do without ever actually teaching me. She walked around me slowly. Every step she took made my pulse jump. I stared straight ahead, afraid that if I looked at her, I'd fall apart completely. "You didn't even try to hide it," she said softly. Not accusing. Observing. "You didn't panic when the door knocked. You didn't rip it all off." She stopped in front of me. "That tells me something." My throat went dry. I wanted to speak. To explain. To apologize. To beg. But my mouth refused to cooperate. The silence stretched, thick and humiliating. Isabella reached up and gently tilted my chin with 2 fingers. "Look at yourself." She turned me toward the mirror. I sucked in a sharp breath. There I was, wig perfect, makeup intact, dress hugging me in a way that no longer felt like a costume. My legs trembled in stockings that suddenly felt permanent. I didn't look like a man caught doing something embarrassing. I looked arranged, prepared, owned. "This isn't curiosity anymore," Isabella said behind me. "This isn't some silly experiment you can laugh off later." She leaned closer, her reflection appearing beside mine. "This is surrender." My hands shook. I didn't plan for you to see, I whispered. She smiled, slow, knowing. But you hoped I would. The truth hit me harder than any accusation ever could. I had. Some part of me had dressed more carefully tonight. Had chosen this dress instead of a safer one. Had put on the choker. Had practiced walking instead of hiding. I hadn't just been playing. I had been waiting. Isabella stepped back and crossed her arms. You understand what happens now, don't you? My heart hammered so loudly I was sure she could hear it. If I accept this, she continued, then it doesn't stay a secret little game you control. It becomes something I control. She walked to the coffee table and picked up my phone. Unlocked it. Scrolled. I froze. My stomach dropped as she casually flipped through photos. Angles I'd taken for myself, reflections I never meant to share, proof that this had been going on far longer than I'd ever admitted out loud. She raised an eyebrow. How long? I swallowed. Months. She nodded, as if she'd already known. And every time you dressed, she said, setting the phone down, you felt smaller, quieter, more obedient. My silence answered for me. Isabella approached again, stopping just inches away. You don't want to stop, she said. You want permission. Her hand brushed my waist, not possessive, not gentle, deliberate. You want rules. My knees nearly gave out. She stepped back once more, creating distance that somehow felt more threatening than closeness. So here's what's going to happen, she said. My breath caught. I'm not deciding tonight. Confusion flickered through me. She smiled. Tomorrow, you're going to wake up and go to work like nothing happened. You're going to sit in your chair, answer emails, talk to people who have no idea who you really are. She leaned in again, voice dropping. And you're going to wonder every second whether this version of you, her fingers adjusted the strap of my dress, is the last one that belongs to you. My chest tightened painfully. Because when I decide, she continued, you won't get to dress for yourself anymore. She straightened the choker. You'll dress for me. My legs trembled so badly I had to brace myself against the arm of the couch. Isabella turned toward the bedroom door. Stay exactly like that, she said over her shoulder. The door closed behind her. The lock clicked. I stood there alone. Still dressed. Still exposed. Still waiting. The mirror reflected someone who no longer looked like they could simply change back. Someone who had crossed a line without knowing where it led. And as I stood there, heels sinking into the floor, heart racing with fear and anticipation, one question echoed louder than anything else. Had I just lost control of my secret? Or had I finally given it away on purpose?